In February of 2020, a veteran Bigfoot researcher rented a remote cabin in a Florida national forest. He just wanted a week alone. He spent years searching for creatures in the woods. That week, he found out what was searching for him. I'm Carol Ann. Welcome to The In-Between. Those of you who hang out in the Bigfoot corners of YouTube may have heard the name Mark Barton. Mark and his best friend, Chris Connor, have spent many a day and night in Florida's green swamp looking mainly for Bigfoot and the skunk ape. But any cryptid that chooses to show itself works just as well. They have lots of videos on the Legends of the Wilderness channel where they and the rest of their team have varying degrees of success, with experiences ranging from finding prints to ghostly encounters of having ponytails pulled by some invisible force. But it's not one of these forays into the swamp with a bunch of his friends that changes Mark's life forever. Nope. It's when he tried to get away from all of that, to catch his breath for a minute. That's when it all came crashing through the door. It's February of 2020, and life is getting pretty busy for Mark. It's been a whirlwind of people pulling at him. Professional obligations, the demands of their YouTube channel. The man needs some downtime, a little reset. So he decides to rent a remote cabin in a national forest for a week. The cabin rents from Friday to Friday, so Mark has a friend drop him and his supplies off with a promise to return the following Friday to pick him up. So he has no truck to go anywhere, but he has cell service if there's any kind of an emergency. Perfect. He has no video gear with him. He isn't planning on shooting any content. This week is about getting away from all of that. The only thing he brings is one of Chris's trail cams that he sets up just a small walk away from the cabin, hoping to catch some cute woodland creatures for a little extra footage for the channel. Nothing serious. The cabin sits deep in the trees. There's a small clearing for a yard, but then it's surrounded by thick undergrowth and swamp. It's the kind of place where the world feels very far away, and that is exactly what Mark is looking for. He unpacks and settles in. The cabin is simple, a single room with a couch, a small kitchen area, and a good solid door with a sturdy lock. Outside is a fire pit with a grill grate for cooking. He's brought lots of wood, food, and a bottle of whiskey and a cigar or two. He doesn't smoke or drink, but isn't that what manly men do in a cabin in the woods? Every evening as dusk settles in, he steps outside to the fire pit, stacks the wood, lights it, and watches it catch. He cooks his supper over the open flames, steaks and burgers sizzling and popping as the grease drips into the fire. And each night, as he sits there staring into the embers, he hears sounds coming from the edge of the clearing where the grass meets the dense tree line. Sounds like a hog, grunting and brooding and snuffing around like it's foraging or something. And Mark can hear that it's right there, far enough into the trees that he can't see it, but close enough to charge at him if it gets mad. Now, Mark has gotten to know all about hogs from his time in the swamps with Chris. He knows they are destructive beasts that tear up the ground and leave poop everywhere. The grunting noises come from the same spot each night, but morning after morning, when Mark walks into the tree line to try to find the tracks, nothing. No dug up dirt, no upturned roots, no muddy prints, no foul-smelling droppings. Just silence. So he shrugs it off. Maybe it's the echo of some other creature someplace else. Maybe it's his imagination, but it nags at him. Hogs don't vanish without a trace. He checks the trail cam. Nothing on it. So after several nights of this phantom hog with no evidence to show for the sounds, he decides to relocate the trail cam closer to the exit road because he actually saw some deer over there. A move he becomes very thankful for later. The days blur in quiet routine, reading, resting, occasional walks along the path. No visitors, no interruptions. Wednesday arrives with a forecast for rain on Thursday, his last full day before he has to get back to the real world. So he decides to use up all of his remaining wood that night because there's no point in leaving it to get soaked in the rain. So that evening, he builds the fire bigger than usual, piling on the extra logs until it is a tower of flames. He sits down in his chair, and the heat just bakes his face as he settles into that trance-like state that only a campfire can really give you. And as the fire dies down just enough that he can see over the top of the flames, through the rippling heat haze, he sees it. 2 red points of light, steady, unblinking, about 5 feet off the ground. Eye shine. Now, in the Bigfoot community, or any cryptid community for that matter, this is a rare thrill. In all his years in the swamp, Mark has never seen red eye shine. His heart starts pumping a little harder with excitement. He leans over a little to one side in his chair, and the eyes wink out. He sits up straight again, and they reappear. He stands up, walks over to the other side of the fire, and shines his flashlight into the woods. Nothing. No shape, no movement, just the endless wall of trees. So he sits back down, heart beating even a little faster now, and the eyes return, closer, unblinking through the flame veil. Now, it's interesting to note that for someone whose job it is to film everything for content creation, not once did it occur to Mark to bring out his phone. The thought never crosses his mind. He's too busy watching the eyes. And then it happens. 2 heavy, invisible hands slam onto his shoulders from behind and drive him down into the chair. His spine compresses. Even his ribs start to protest the sudden downward pressure. At 6'4" and 200 pounds, Mark is no lightweight. But this invisible force is so great that he cannot get out of the chair. Let me say that again. He cannot get out of the chair. Panic explodes inside his body. His heart is hammering so hard he can feel his heartbeat in his teeth and in his temples. And despite the heat from the still roaring fire, he instantly breaks out in a cold sweat. Then he hears them. Not with his ears, in his head. Multiple voices working together as one entity, forcing their way in. And no is not an option. He feels them invading and violating every quiet corner of his mind until his thoughts scatter like marbles kicked across a tile floor. This is not some gentle mind speak. It's brutal, violent. His brain feels smeared, marbles everywhere. And as hard as he tries, he cannot get them back together. They speak plainly, arrogantly, their tone dripping with condescension. We are the predator, and you are the prey, and we hunt you. But Mark doesn't just hear the words. Images, concepts, knowledge of what is happening flood his mind like somebody just opened a fire hydrant. Fragments come together like a nightmare puzzle that reveals their entire playbook, their MO, how the game works. This is their favorite sport, and now Mark has seen the whole thing. And if you are a person who spends any time in the woods, stick around because you need to know it too. But back to Mark, because right now he's still pinned in that chair. These entities make it crystal clear that tonight they finish him. Their certainty hits him like a brick. He's in a world of hurt and he doesn't see any way out. He's been a Christian his whole life, but in this moment, his faith crumbles. Everything fails. His strength, his will, his resolve. He knows he's a dead man about to become a trophy kill. As Mark's trying to get the pieces of his mind back together, the fire pops. But in his head, it sounds like an explosion, like a shotgun blast inside his skull. His ears ring and his vision goes white for a second. He feels a sudden stabbing pain in his head. Then a voice, not theirs and not his, cuts through everything. Run. Mark explodes from the chair. His bad knee screams, but keeps working as he runs, covering ground not like the 67-year-old that he is, but more like the 18-year-old he used to be. He reaches the cabin, dives through the doorway, spins, slams the door, and throws the lock. They are outside. He can feel them. Their voices are screaming in a fury that is beyond human anger, demanding over and over, "Let us through the threshold." But the door holds. And then Mark realizes something. He is safe. He's safe inside these walls because he has not invited them in. They need his permission to cross the threshold. In that moment, he has the control. He takes out his phone, but he can't get it to work. Not only is he having trouble getting his fingers to cooperate, but the screen is all blurry, like the presence of these beings is causing electronics to malfunction. He tries again and again, but nothing. Their voices keep hammering inside his head, tormenting, relentless, furious that he slipped away. He's barely touched his bottle of whiskey so far, but he grabs the bottle and takes a swig. Then another, hoping it'll help drown out the angry intruders in his head. And it works. He passes out on the couch. The next day, he drinks again. He can't even bring himself to open the door, too terrified they might still be out there. When his friend arrives Friday to pick him up, Mark stays glued to the man's side, never more than an arm's reach away while they load the gear, afraid to be alone even for a second. His friend gets irritated. "What the hell, Mark? What are you doing?" Mark just tells him he doesn't feel well, like he's going to pass out. The last thing he needs to do is grab Chris's trail cam from where he had it posted by the exit gate. If it were his own camera, he'd leave it. Just get the hell out of there. But his respect for his best friend makes him stop for it. Now, it might sound kind of funny to be worried about something as relatively insignificant as a trail cam after everything he just went through, but Mark will be the first to tell you that his mind is not working right. He is having a really hard time just keeping a grip on reality, much less deciding what's rational. On the drive back home, he knows he has to go see Chris, not only because Chris is the one person he can count on to believe this incredible story, but because Chris needs to know what's out there before he heads back into the woods himself. But sitting in the truck, Mark can't even remember where Chris lives. As they drive, though, he can feel those scattered marbles in his head starting to click back together. He remembers where Chris lives. He texts him and tells him he needs to see him right now. And Chris says, "No problem, man. Come on over." When he gets there, he sits at the kitchen table with Chris and his wife, Beata, and he just falls apart. He tells them everything. The hands pressing him down, the voices forcing their way into his head, the predator and prey game, that he was supposed to die there. He tells Chris, "I can't ever go back into the swamp with you." He's a marked man, and he is not about to go anywhere that might give them the opportunity to call in that marker. Chris listens. Beata listens. And Mark just cries. Checkmate. Now, the game might be over for Mark. I doubt he's going back into the wild anytime soon, but it's not over for you. And if you spend any time in the woods, you need to know what the game plan is, because Mark got a front row seat to the whole show. And fortunately, he made it out alive to tell us what the playbook says. So here it is. First thing to know, as many of us have already suspected, there is a veil between two worlds. The beings on the other side, for the most part, slip back and forth at will, with no one on this side ever knowing about it. However, when you smell, that skunky garbage death smell, that's them. Or more precisely, that's a novice version of them. Apparently, it takes practice to slip back and forth unnoticed. The ones who are new to crossing over will sometimes accidentally tear the veil, which creates that god-awful odor that we have all heard so much about. They come to this side of the veil to hunt. And according to them, this is ours. It was given to us, and we take from what is ours. Every single hunt is specifically tailored to each individual prey, but not everyone is hunted. Humans fall into 3 categories. You're either prey, you're a pawn used to manipulate the prey, or you're simply ignored. Once the prey has been chosen, a predator is assigned and the helpers and observers fall in line. No rivalry, no jostling for the kill. They align seamlessly as one. Being considered prey is pretty self-explanatory, but the pawns are a little more interesting. Pawns unknowingly help set the trap. I'm going to use Mark's team from the Legends of the Wilderness channel as an example. Mark says he was told that he and Chris were marked as prey. But Chris's wife, Beata, and his sister Betty were both pawns. So when Chris and Mark start wondering what they're really doing in the woods, spending so much time to find absolutely nothing, something will happen. Usually to a pawn that reignites their interest and keeps them going back. In one episode, something pushes on Beata's camera pole. In another episode, something pulls Betty's ponytail. Now, these seem like harmless interactions, but according to Mark, they are actually calculated nudges to keep them engaged, to keep them returning until the predator is ready for the kill. Think of the predators as magicians. They orchestrate something awe-inspiring with the right hand, so you are not watching the left. That's what's happening here. Whatever beast you happen to be searching for, whatever keeps you coming back into the woods, that's the magician's right hand. And just like every good magician has an assistant, so do the predators. Those are the elusive creatures that we seldom see, but keep us coming back for more. Creatures like Sasquatch, Bigfoot, and the skunk ape, probably among many others, that everyone chases, nothing but the right hand. The magician's flourish to distract. Footprints stamped in mud, tree structures twisted into arches, knocks that echoed through the woods, all tangible bait. At one point, Chris and Mark were thinking of hanging it up, but they found a massive footprint, a perfect cast that reignited their excitement. Coincidence? Not according to the playbook. They tell Mark that Patty in the Patterson-Gimlin film isn't fleeing in terror. She's luring Bob Gimlin and Roger Patterson forward, glancing back to make sure they follow, like a cat batting at a mouse, leading them straight toward the predators waiting in the trees. Let that sink in for a moment. But it's the left hand that holds the real truth. The predators, or as they call themselves, the masters, stay cloaked as whispery shapes that dart between trees and vanish into pixelated air. Now, Mark has seen these Glimmerman creatures before, and he is far from alone. Many people have caught glimpses of a shimmer in the trees, fleeting shadows, whispery creatures seen only from the corners of their eyes. And now we know these are the masters. They orchestrate everything. The hairy beast you're trying to find is irrelevant. It's a ruse. It's the masters who are pulling the strings, and it's the masters who deliver death. But here is a very important point. That death sentence they deliver might not look like what we think it does. It's more than likely not going to be the prey vanishing forever, although that certainly could happen. But it could also be as mundane looking as a hiker tripping on a tree root and falling down a cliffside, Or it could be as arm's length as a Bigfoot researcher with a heart condition dying of a heart attack alone in his apartment. To them, some kills are better than others. The heart attack is a weaker kill, sure, but a kill is a kill. And they don't hunt with the weapons we're familiar with, like guns or arrows. They have a much more surefire weapon, themselves. They told Mark that either they as beings or something else about their side of the veil is toxic to humans. Just looking at them for too long is bad for us. But if you are touched by them, like Mark was pinned down in that chair, that touch will eventually kill you as surely as ingesting poison. They can cause deaths that masquerade as natural. Car wrecks, drownings, cancers, heart attacks. If they orchestrate it, it's their kill, no matter what the coroner's report says. The other weapon they have? Patience. Time means nothing to them. They could spend decades getting every piece in the right place before they spring their trap. Decades. Now you may be thinking, wait a minute, how come they were touching Mark and nothing happened to him? Well, something did happen to him. For weeks and months after he got back home, he kept feeling weaker and weaker, and his legs started to swell. He went to see a cardiologist who recommended that they go in with a catheter and take a look around. When Mark woke back up, the doctor told him he put a stent in the left anterior descending artery. That's the widowmaker artery, because he had 100% blockage. And it had been that way for about 3 to 4 months, the same amount of time since his encounter at the cabin. And these masters, they know everything about us, our strengths, our weaknesses, even where we live. And they use that information to manipulate us. For instance, Mark and Chris are both tagged as prey. So they go after Mark first, knowing that if he dies, Chris will almost certainly go back to the swamp in memory of his lost friend, giving them opportunities to hunt him as well. One kill leading to the next. That's not instinct. That's strategy. Now, one detail in Mark's encounter I found kind of odd. Remember when he said that they basically downloaded the whole playbook into his head? Why go through the effort of giving Mark a peek behind the curtain if you're just going to kill him? Well, in their world, the more knowledge the prey possesses, the better the kill. Since they are all set to kill him that night, they loaded him up with information like a farmer fattens a pig to take their average kill up to a trophy kill. The greater the knowledge the prey carries to the grave, the sweeter the victory. And where do they take these trophies? Where do they disappear to? Well, according to Mark, their realm is under the earth, which for some of you may sound a little familiar. Philippians chapter 2, verse 10 says that at the name of Jesus, every knee should bow, of things in heaven and things in earth and things under the earth. So we know that Mark lived to tell the tale, but we also know that he was never the same. The zest and energy he had to tromp through the green swamp with Chris in search of the skunk ape, gone. All of it. He may have dodged a bullet with the heart attack, but Mark says he believes that because he should have died that night and was only saved by divine intervention, he still carries a piece of them with him. A pressure in his chest and his head that never goes away. But maybe that's not such a bad thing, because it always reminds him to tell whoever may be watching that they are not invited past his threshold. The way Mark sees it, he can't ever go back to the swamp. He can't even ever go camping again. But what he can do is breathe, tell his story, and hope someone hears it in time, before the hands press down on them, before the voices force their way in, and before they need the fire to pop and a voice telling them to run. I have no idea where Mark Barton is now. As far as I can tell, he's been pretty much MIA since his interview with Carrie and Daniela from Bigfoot Odyssey, where he told his story. If you want to hear Mark tell his story in his own words, I will have a link in the description. But be warned, it's maybe not a good episode to watch if you have kids in the room. The trauma that he feels from this experience comes out in some colorful ways. But I'll tell you what, it's hard to watch that interview and not be convinced that he experienced something terrifying. I will also add a link to the Legends of the Wilderness channel if you want to go check out some of their videos and see what Mark was like before his encounter. But wherever he is now and whatever he's doing, I sincerely hope he is doing well. If this story wasn't terrifying enough, click right here to take it up yet another notch. Be careful out there, and I will see you here again on The In-Between.